Blood dripped from the human's knuckles as he towered over the huddled form of the Krylaxian professor. Mira watched in stunned silence from the doorway, her mind reeling at the scene before her. Just hours ago, she had been eagerly anticipating her first day at Galactic Nexus University, the most prestigious xenoanthropology school in the known universe. Now she found herself face to face with the most feared and enigmatic species in the galaxy, a human. The lecture hall buzzed with tension as Mira took her seat among her fellow students, a diverse array of aliens from across the cosmos. Dr. Xyloth, the renowned Lemnorian xenoanthropologist, strode to the podium, his eyes glinting with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Welcome to Galactic Nexus University," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "In this course, we will be studying the most dominant and dangerous species in the universe, humans." Mira exchanged a worried glance with Crescent, her Lemnorian classmate. Like most of the students in the room, they had only heard whispers of humanity's prowess, tales of their ruthless expansion, advanced weaponry, and the trail of conquered worlds left in their wake. Dr. Xyloth's grim overview of human history only confirmed their worst fears. As the lecture concluded, Mira's attention was drawn to a lone figure sitting in the back of the room, a human male, his eyes downcast and his shoulders hunched. Tyler Thompson, the only human student in the program, seemed to shrink under the weight of his classmates' scrutiny. Mira felt a pang of sympathy for him, sensing that there was more to his story than the brutal portrayal of his species. But before she could approach him, a commotion erupted outside the lecture hall. Mira rushed to the scene, only to find Dr. Xyloth's office in disarray, with the professor himself cowering before a looming human figure. As campus security flooded the area, Mira caught a glimpse of Tyler's face, a mixture of anger, fear, and desperation, before he vanished into the chaos. Mira's heart pounded as she raced through the corridors of Galactic Nexus University, Crescent close on her heels. The Lemnorian's normally vibrant blue skin had turned a sickly gray, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. "We have to find out what happened to Tyler," Mira panted, her mind still reeling from the scene in Dr. Xyloth's office. "Something's not right here." They burst into the dormitory common room, where they found Lux and Gron hunched over a holographic display. The Zephyrian and the Krellian looked up, their expressions grim. "We hacked into the security feeds," Lux said, his voice tight. "Check this out." The footage showed Tyler being dragged from his room by two hulking figures, their features obscured by dark hoods. The humans struggled against his captors, but they overpowered him easily, slamming him into the wall before the feed abruptly cut out. Mira's stomach twisted. "Someone tampered with the recordings," she said, her voice shaking. "We have to search his room for clues." The group made their way to Tyler's dorm, Mira's heart hammering in her chest. The room was in disarray, clothes and books strewn across the floor. Gron picked up a personal tablet, his brow furrowed. "There's a hidden directory here," he said, tapping at the screen. "It's full of classified files on human history." Mira leaned over his shoulder, her eyes widening as she scanned the documents. The files painted a very different picture of humanity than the one presented in their lectures. She read about the countless existential threats humans had faced on their homeworld, from global pandemics to environmental catastrophes. The records showed humans terraforming hostile planets to escape overcrowding and resource depletion, their technological advancements driven by the need to adapt and survive. As she delved deeper, Mira found accounts of extraordinary human bravery and self-sacrifice. She read about humans uniting in the face of extinction-level events, pooling their knowledge and resources to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The files also contained evidence of humans uplifting and integrating other species they encountered, despite initial conflicts and misunderstandings. "This changes everything," Mira breathed, looking up at her friends. "The lectures only told part of the story. Humans are more complex than we thought, capable of both great destruction and great compassion." Before they could discuss the implications further, a chime sounded from each of their communicators. It was a summons from the university's president, Dr. Orcs. The group exchanged nervous glances before making their way to the president's office, unsure of what to expect. Dr. Orcs was waiting for them, his angular features inscrutable. "I've been observing your investigation," he said, his voice smooth and measured. "You've done well to question the official narrative and seek the truth." Mira's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Orcs leaned forward, steepling his long fingers. "Tyler's disappearance was staged," he said, his eyes glinting. "It was a test, designed to gauge your ability to think critically and challenge your preconceptions." The group exchanged shocked glances. "But why?" Crescent asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Orcs smiled thinly. "This university is secretly run by a coalition of humans and aliens who believe that fostering interspecies understanding is key to maintaining peace in the galaxy. We want to recruit students like you who have the curiosity, bravery, and willingness to seek the truth." Mira's mind raced. It was a lot to take in, but she couldn't deny the thrill of excitement that coursed through her. "What would joining this program entail?" she asked, leaning forward. Orcs's smile widened. "You would learn the full truth about humanity and other species, uncovering the complexities and nuances that are often overlooked in official histories. You would become part of a network of individuals working towards greater understanding and cooperation between all sentient beings." Mira looked at her friends, seeing the same mixture of trepidation and excitement in their eyes. As one, they nodded. "We're in," Mira said, her voice steady. As they left Orcs's office, they nearly collided with Tyler, who had been waiting outside. The human looked at them apologetically. "I'm sorry for the deception," he said, running a hand through his hair. "But I'm glad you passed the test. I grew up on Earth, and I've seen firsthand the duality of human nature, the capacity for both great conflict and great compassion. I want to help others understand that complexity." Mira nodded, a newfound respect for Tyler blooming in her chest. She realized that the fear other species felt towards humans stemmed from a lack of understanding and an oversimplification of their nature. She became more determined than ever to uncover the full truth and share that knowledge with others. As the group walked through the halls of Galactic Nexus University, Mira felt a sense of purpose settle over her. She knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but with her friends by her side and a newfound understanding of the complexities of the universe, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Mira's mind buzzed with excitement as she stepped into the cavernous archives of Galactic Nexus University. The air was thick with the scent of old data crystals and preserved documents. She ran her fingers along the spines of ancient tomes, marveling at the wealth of knowledge surrounding her. "This way," Professor Orcs called, leading the group to a sealed chamber. With a wave of his hand, the door slid open, revealing rows upon rows of human artifacts. Crescent's eyes widened. "Is that music?" he asked, cocking his head to listen to the faint strains emanating from a nearby device. Lux nodded, tapping at a control panel. The chamber filled with a haunting melody, strings and voices intertwining in a complex harmony. "Earth's Beethoven," he explained. "Ninth Symphony." Mira closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. The beauty of it brought tears to her eyes, a stark contrast to the tales of human aggression she'd heard in her earlier classes. As the weeks passed, Mira and her friends immersed themselves in human history and culture. They pored over accounts of great scientific achievements and horrific wars, marveling at humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction. One afternoon, they gathered in a lecture hall, buzzing with anticipation. Admiral Jean Caval, a grizzled human with piercing blue eyes, took the podium. "I've seen the worst of what humanity can do," Caval began, his voice gravelly, "but I've also witnessed our greatest moments of courage and compassion." He recounted a battle where human forces had fought fiercely to protect a vulnerable alien colony from invasion. "We bled alongside beings we'd barely met," Caval said, "because it was the right thing to do." Mira glanced at Groen, noting the conflict in the Krellian's eyes. She knew he struggled to reconcile these accounts with his preconceived notions of humanity. Later in the term, Dr. Lena Sorensen's lecture on human empathy left a profound impact on the class. She presented holographic reconstructions of early human societies, demonstrating how cooperation had been key to their survival and evolution. Humans thrive on connection, Sorensen explained, her eyes alight with passion. Our ability to understand and relate to others, even those different from us, is our greatest strength. As the semester progressed, heated debates erupted among the students. Mira found herself mediating between Gron's lingering skepticism and Lux's growing admiration for human ingenuity. But what about their weapons? Gron argued one evening in the common room. The destruction they're capable of? Lux countered, those same technologies have been used to terraform barren worlds, to create habitats for displaced species. Mira listened, her mind racing. She was beginning to see the nuances, the shades of gray that defined humanity. The day of the first contact simulation arrived, filling Mira with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As she and her team entered the virtual environment, they found themselves aboard an alien vessel, facing the bridge of a human exploration ship. Captain Ezra Dalton's face filled the view screen, his expression stern but not hostile. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself," he demanded. Mira took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Captain Dalton, I am Mira of the Galactic Nexus University. We come in peace and seek to establish friendly relations." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "Pretty words, but how do we know we can trust you?" Over the next several hours, Mira and her team worked tirelessly to build trust with the human crew. Crescen's diplomatic skills smoothed over cultural misunderstandings, while Lux's technical knowledge helped establish common ground through shared scientific interests. When tensions spiked over a perceived weapons scan, Gron surprised everyone by using his security expertise to explain the defensive nature of their systems, defusing the situation. As the simulation neared its climax, Mira felt the weight of the moment. She addressed Captain Dalton and his crew, her voice steady and sincere. "We may look different, Captain, but we share the same hopes and fears, the same desire to explore, to understand, to grow. The future of our galaxy depends on us learning from one another, on recognizing the strength in our diversity." She saw something shift in Dalton's eyes, a spark of recognition, of possibility. As the simulation concluded, Mira knew they had taken a crucial step towards a future of cooperation and understanding. The lights came up in the simulation chamber, and Professor Orcs approached, a rare smile on his face. "Exceptional work," he said. "Your performance will serve as a model for future contact protocols." Mira exchanged proud glances with her teammates, a sense of purpose filling her chest. She knew their journey was far from finished, but for the first time, she could clearly envision a future where humans and aliens worked side by side, exploring the stars together. The success of the first contact simulation reverberated through the halls of Galactic Nexus University. Mira and her friends found themselves at the center of attention, their faces plastered on hollow displays across campus. Professor Orcs's rare smile became a more frequent sight as he proudly introduced the group to visiting dignitaries and esteemed faculty members. One afternoon, as Mira sat in the common room reviewing xenobiology notes, her communicator chimed with an urgent message. She opened it to find Professor Orcs's holographic form hovering above her palm. "Mira, gather your team and come to my office immediately," he said, his eyes glinting with excitement. "I have news that will take your education to new heights." Curiosity piqued, Mira rounded up Crescen, Lux, and Gron. They made their way through the winding corridors of the university, speculating about what awaited them. As they entered Orcs's office, they found the professor standing before a large holodisplay. He turned to face them, his angular features alight with anticipation. "Your performance in the simulation has not gone unnoticed," Orcs began. "The faculty has decided to organize a seminar with actual human representatives. And the keynote speaker," he paused for effect, "none other than Admiral Reese Chandler himself." Mira's breath caught in her throat. Chandler was a living legend, a name she'd only encountered in historical texts and news reports. His decades of work fostering alliances between humanity and alien civilizations had shaped the very foundation of interstellar diplomacy. "The seminar will take place in the Grand Amphitheater next week," Orcs continued. "I expect you all to be there, front and center." The days leading up to the seminar passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Mira and her friends pored over Chandler's diplomatic history, familiarizing themselves with his most notable achievements. On the day of the event, the grand amphitheater buzzed with energy. Students, faculty, and distinguished guests from across the galaxy filled every seat. Mira and her friends took their places in the front row, hearts racing with excitement. A hush fell over the crowd as Admiral Reese Chandler took the stage. His weathered features and commanding presence drew all eyes to him. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of experience. "I stand before you today, not just as a human," Chandler began, "but as a citizen of a vast and diverse galaxy. A galaxy that, not so long ago, teetered on the brink of all-out war." He recounted humanity's early interstellar encounters, painting vivid pictures of the awe, fear, and hostility that often define those meetings. Mira found herself transported to those tense moments of first contact, feeling the weight of uncertainty and the spark of possibility. Chandler's expression grew somber as he turned to a pivotal moment in his career, the Vorn crisis. "The attack came without warning," he said, his voice low. "Human colonies reduced to ash, thousands of lives lost in an instant. The cry for retaliation echoed through every corner of human space." Mira leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding tale. She watched as Chandler described the painstaking process of opening negotiations with the Vorn leadership, the cultural exchanges that slowly built bridges of understanding. "It was in those moments of shared vulnerability," Chandler said, his eyes scanning the audience, "that we found our common ground. We saw in the Vorn not monsters, but beings driven by the same fears and hopes that drive us all." As Chandler detailed the historic peace treaty that transformed the Vorn from enemies to allies, Mira felt a swell of emotion in her chest. She glanced at Gron, noting the conflict and admiration warring in his eyes. "Our strength," Chandler concluded, his voice ringing through the amphitheater, "lies not in our ability to wage war, but in our capacity for empathy, our adaptability, and our unwavering commitment to finding common ground, even with those who once sought our destruction." The applause that followed was thunderous. As the crowd began to disperse, Professor Orcs motioned for Mira and her friends to follow him. They made their way through the throng to a small antechamber where Admiral Chandler waited. "Admiral," Orcs said, "I'd like you to meet our top students. They've shown remarkable promise in interspecies diplomacy." Chandler's piercing gaze fell upon the group. "I hear you've been making waves," he said, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Tell me, what was your biggest challenge in the first contact simulation?" Mira stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Balancing assertiveness with openness, sir. We had to establish boundaries while remaining receptive to new ideas and perspectives." Chandler nodded approvingly. "A challenge I've faced in every negotiation I've ever conducted. How did you overcome it?" As the conversation flowed, Mira found herself engrossed in Chandler's tales of his most challenging negotiations. She hung on every word, absorbing the philosophies that had guided his approach to interstellar diplomacy. "Remember," Chandler said as their time drew to a close, "the goal isn't to win, but to understand. True victory comes when both sides walk away feeling heard and respected." As they left the antechamber, Mira felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through her veins. She looked at her friends, seeing the same fire in their eyes. "We have so much more to learn," Lux said, his voice filled with tenacity. Crescent nodded. "And so much work to do." Gron, who had remained silent throughout much of the conversation, finally spoke. I think I'm beginning to understand," he said softly, "the complexity of it all." Mira smiled, placing a hand on Gron's shoulder. "That's where it starts," she said. "Understanding. And from there, who knows what we can achieve." As they walked through the halls of Galactic Nexus University, Mira's mind raced with possibilities. The final semester loomed ahead, promising new challenges and opportunities. She knew that the lessons learned today would shape not only their education, but their future roles as ambassadors of unity in a galaxy that desperately needed it. The euphoria of meeting Admiral Chandler lingered as Mira and her friends threw themselves into their final semester. Days blurred into weeks of intense study, spirited debates, and late-night strategy sessions for their upcoming careers as interstellar diplomats. On a crisp morning, As students bustled across the university grounds, a deafening roar shattered the air. The ground buckled beneath Mira's feet, sending her sprawling. Acrid smoke billowed from the direction of the central power core. Ears ringing, Mira stumbled to her feet. Chaos erupted around her. Screams, sirens, the crackle of flames. Through the haze, she spotted Lux pulling a dazed Crescent from a pile of debris. "Gron!" Mira shouted, scanning the devastation. Relief flooded her as she saw the Krellian emerge from a damaged building, guiding a group of shell-shocked students. Hours passed in a blur of triage and rescue efforts. As the immediate danger subsided, the true horror of the situation became clear. The explosion had claimed countless lives, leaving the campus in ruins. Professor Orcs, his face ashen, gathered Mira and her friends in what remained of his office. "It wasn't an accident," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He activated a holo display, showing security footage of masked figures tampering with the power core. "Anti-human extremists," Orcs explained, his eyes filled with sorrow. "They've long opposed our work here. But this—" He trailed off, gesturing at the destruction beyond the window. Mira felt the weight of realization settle in her chest. Their success, their growing understanding of humanity, it had made them targets. In the days that followed, grief warred with commitment as the survivors rallied to rebuild. Mira threw herself into the effort, coordinating relief teams and comforting those who had lost friends and classmates. But a new battle loomed. Whispers of the university council's plans to shut down the xenoanthropology program reached Mira's ears. Fear and mistrust threatened to undo years of progress. Mira paced the floor of her damaged dormitory, mind racing. She thought of Admiral Chandler's words, of the lessons she'd learned about human resilience and the power of dialogue. A plan began to form. Gathering her allies, Mira prepared to make her stand before the council. As she entered the makeshift meeting chamber, she felt the weight of countless lives, those lost and those yet to come, resting on her shoulders. The council members regarded her with a mixture of wariness and resignation. Mira took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of diplomatic skill she'd honed over the past year. "Esteemed council," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I stand before you not just as a student, but as a witness to both the best and worst our galaxy has to offer."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.